All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this village board meeting to order on Monday, April 7th, 2025. We're very pleased to be joined to present the colors this evening by Boy Scout Troop 32. I think they got the whole troop here this evening, and so welcome both the Scouts and their leaders. Very active troop here in the village of Arlington Heights, and so we're very pleased and honored to be joined by them here this evening. And I would like to introduce Life Rank Scout Gianni Scaletta, who will read the names of the Scouts and leaders who are with us this evening. Welcome, Gianni.
Thank you. Today we are joined by Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Lopazinski, Mr. Wakefield, Mr. McLeod, Mr. Scaletta, Mrs. O'Donnell, Mrs. Wilhelm, Mrs. Bartell, Mrs. Ferguson. And Scouts, we have Thomas O'Donnell, Gavin Wakefield, Henry Lopazinski, Joshua Martins, Ben Kolachek, Ayla McGann, Nora O'Donnell, Matthew Latanzio, Ada McLeod, and Dylan Ferguson. Color at attention. Audience, please rise. Color Guard forward march. Scout salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color Guard halt. Color Guard prepare to post the colors. Color Guard post the colors. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2. Color Guard return to ranks. About face. Color Guard forward march. Color Guard halt. Color Guard at ease. Audience, please be seated.
Let's give them a round of applause. Well, thank you again to Troop 32 for kicking off our meeting this evening, and thanks for all the great work that the leaders and family members do in training up the next great generation of Americans and leaders of not only our community, but whatever community they choose to live in. And so thanks again for joining us this evening. Would the clerk please call a roll?
Trustee Baldino?
Here.
Trustee Shirley?
Here.
Trustee LaBedz?
Here.
Trustee Grasse? Trustee Schwingbeck?
Here.
Trustee Dunnington?
Here.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Here.
Trustee Bertucci?
Here.
President Hayes?
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we have just one set to approve tonight. That's from our village board meeting of March 17, 2025. Any changes or passes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move approval of the village board minutes, meeting minutes of March 17th, 2025.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Dunnington. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And next we have our approval of the accounts payable, and I call on trustee Bertucci.
Thank you, Mayor. Move approval of the warrant register for the check date March 30th, 2025 in the amount of $838,780.74.
Second.
Motion by trustee Bertucci, seconded by trustee Baldino. Any questions or comments from the board? Or was it trustee Schwingbeck? Did I get it wrong?
It doesn't matter.
It was trustee Schwingbeck. I just heard a male voice down here.
yeah.
Just so we got it right for the record, it was trustee Schwingbeck who did the second. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. We move on to recognitions and communications, and just a couple of things before we move to further in our agenda. We did have a municipal election on Tuesday. I just want to congratulate all the winners, but more importantly, to thank all those who ran for public office to serve our community. And so I know a lot of hard work was done by all of those who ran over the past 6 months or so, and we very much appreciate giving our community a choice in a number of different contested elections this time. And so If you didn't win this time, try again next time. We are always looking for people who want to serve the community in one way or another, and you don't have to serve as an elected official. We have appointed boards and commissions. We're going to appoint 2 people to our Arts Commission this evening, and there's many, many other ways to serve your community. As these leaders in the back of the room can attest, we've got great people that are serving as Boy and Girl Scout leaders, and also, coaching Little League teams and teaching Sunday school and serving as volunteers in one way or another in our senior living centers. And so we just appreciate everyone who serves the public and gives back to their community in one way or another. And I just wanted to take a minute to address the hands-off rally, the protest rally that occurred not just in our community, but nationwide this past Saturday. And I've been very proud over the course of my 34 years that we've been able to keep, for the most part, politics out of this village boardroom. And so I'm not intending to bring politics into this boardroom here this evening in my second to last meeting. It hasn't happened before, and it's not going to happen this evening. But I do want to just address a couple of things, and I'm going to turn it over to our village manager. There is no question that the people have the right to peaceably protest and to assemble. And we're not in any way intending to infringe on that. But we have our village attorney here. He can attest to the fact that that constitutional right is not unlimited. Under the Constitution and under the many, many case laws, that right can be restricted to a certain extent by reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, especially when it negatively impacts public safety. And so that was a concern that was raised by a number of people on Saturday afternoon when the crowd got into our public streets, including some very busy public streets on a Saturday afternoon. Really our main thoroughfares on Arlington Heights Road and Northwest Highway, and right adjacent to a train station. So when you're bringing, 1,000 or 2,000 people in close contact to moving cars and to potentially moving trains, it creates a potential public safety hazard. And so we're not in any way trying to infringe on the constitutional right of freedom of speech and to protest and to assemble. But we do want to make sure it's done safely, without any damage to property and especially without any damage to people. And so that's really our only objective. And, we learned a lot Saturday afternoon. The village manager is going to talk about that. We're still in the process of determining what next steps will be in terms of controlling assemblies like this going forward. And so with that, I will turn it over to our village manager, Randy Recklaus.
Thank you, Mayor. As you said, nothing that we're talking about here is looking at limiting in any way folks' right to exercise their First Amendment rights. What happened was we had a situation where the event ended up being much larger than was anticipated, and there was a blockage of major intersection for about 20, 25 minutes. This was not something that appeared to be a planned portion of this demonstration, but what we are looking into, and we're looking very thoughtfully and going to be working with meeting organizers, like anytime we have a big event, what could we have done differently? What could the organizers have done differently? How could we have worked differently together? And how could we have communicated this differently to minimize any disruption to the community and limitation of people moving through the area and public safety vehicles moving through the area. So we think it's a good opportunity to look at our policies, practices, training, and methods in these areas. And this is something that we're going to look at carefully, and then we'll be coming back to the village board with kind of our observations and thoughts, and including looking at legally what options are. But as the mayor said, I think Arlington Heights is one of the big communities in the area. Very often is a gathering place for people to express their views, and no one is looking at changing that. It's just making sure that when it does happen, we work with folks to do that in a manner that's safe and inconveniences the community to the least degree possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Recklaus. Mr. Passman, anything to add?
No, it's very well stated.
Okay, all right, thank you. Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I just wanted to add, I was there Saturday afternoon, and at the beginning, I can assure you that the organizers, starting at North School Park, were telling people, stay on the sidewalks, not to go into the street. And I think I know what happened, just having talked to organizers, that it grew organically. There were more and more people that came. People wanted to express their First Amendment rights of protest here in Arlington Heights. Not everybody wants to go downtown to Chicago to participate in actions there. It was also something that my understanding was hadn't been in the works for too many days. It wasn't originally going to be one of the sites. So I found people to be, of those that I witnessed, very respectful of one another, of the police officers that were there. I witnessed people thanking police officers for being there, even though, as people were walking on the sidewalk. And so I think that while we can always take a look at what processes can be done, I want to just state that I thought it went actually very well. And there was no intent to disturb, impede public right-of-way. Yes, there were a lot of people, and it did end up interfering. I did see that a police car was blocking the left turn lane from Northwest Highway to North Arlington Heights Road as an abundance of caution, I'm sure, to ensure nobody got hurt. But even the drivers in the cars seemed to be pretty respectful. So I would just like to say that that was my perspective from Saturday afternoon.
Okay, Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you. I agree with Trustee LaBedz. I just wanted to add, I was also at the event on Saturday, and I just want to say that the police were fantastic. They were calm, professional, and respectful. And I'm confident that the police and the fire do have a plan whenever Arlington Heights Road and Northwest Highway are blocked, whether that's for an accident or a train delay or a protest. So I think it's important that we respect everybody's First Amendment right. Thank you.
All right, Trustee Bertucci.
Mayor, while I agree that the crowd was generally very much respectful and well-behaved, I agree with the village manager and with you that we do have to have a game plan. It is dangerous with the train. I think maybe seeking something that would be, X amount of feet away from the tracks, something to that effect, or just making sure that organizers understand that Arlington Heights Road is a regional thoroughfare for emergency vehicles, not only for our ambulances and certainly fire trucks, but the ambulances. I live right off of Arlington Heights Road, and Buffalo Grove, Wheeling, Palatine often use that Arlington Heights Road and Northwest Highway as a thoroughfare to our regional hospital, the regional hospital that's in Arlington Heights, obviously Northwest Community Hospital. So I think we do have to look at that going forward, and that's, I would agree 100%. We're not, again, as you guys have mentioned, we're not looking to impinge anybody's freedoms, obviously, to protest. And I would agree that there was probably just, it was in the moment kind of thing, but there's things that we can do to be in the moment to prevent that in the moment situation. And 20 to 25 minutes of blocking Arlington Heights Road when somebody's coming down Arlington Heights Road in an ambulance for a heart attack or something like that is a concern. So I like the direction we're taking it. We're going to have some conversations and work with organizers in the future to make sure those things don't happen. Plus, what we're trying to do is protect the protesters too, especially when it comes to maintaining some distance from the actual tracks. So, thanks, Randy.
Okay. If nothing further from the board, then and is there any other communications from the board? on any other topic? Right, seeing none. We'll move on then in the agenda to citizens to be heard. And I do have one blue card from an individual wishing to address the board on items not on the agenda. And Mr. Bertucci, you know the drill now. You have three minutes.
Yep. Hi again, everybody. First off, I'd like to second Mayor Hayes and just say thank you so much to everybody who ran for this last election cycle. To those who won, congratulations. I look forward to, seeing you and working more to help improve this town, as great as it already is. And to those of you who are finishing up your terms, thank you so much for the time that you've given to this great community. The main thing that I want to do today is just put a request to the board, however it might go, to just basically say, what I've learned is that like safe streets and stuff like that, a lot of that is what gets built is decided by board policy. And board policy starts in the committees and the boards and all of those. So I would like to request that we make the Bike and Pedestrian Safety Committee meet more regularly. If we could try to put something in there, because right now they seem to meet once or twice a year and very irregularly. We at the Safe Streets Alliance for Arlington Heights, we have a lot of ideas that we would like to talk and investigate and have the town consider. And so we'd like to go through the proper channels to do that. But when the board meets, the Committee for Bike and Pedestrian Safety meets so irregularly, it's hard to do that. So just would like to put in the request to see if we can have that board start meeting at least every 2 months, if not every month or more. Thank you.
It is agenda driven, their meetings, and so they need to have something to talk about. We don't want them to just sit there. So we appreciate what you're saying, and I think the best method for that, Mr. Reckloss, is for, if you have an idea that you would like them to discuss or for the staff to consider, or the board to consider, you can bring it up here, or you could bring it up directly to the village manager. And if it's something that we feel is worthwhile discussing at the commission level, then we'll put it on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have one idea then. Just curb cuts. I noticed we had a lot of work planned on the roads this year, and I was looking through it. Some of them are going to require us to redo the curbs at the intersections and things. And looking through it, IDOT has a number of options that are approved for how you could do the curb cuts where the pedestrians enter into the intersection. And there's options where, like, if you have the intersection here, it kind of goes in the middle, and the person, if you're in a mobility device, you would go into the intersection and then have to turn into the crosswalk. Would request we look into a policy where it basically says if we're redoing curbs and curb cuts, that we do it where there's 2 curb cuts and they lead directly into the intersection, so that people using mobility devices or people who might be blind or vision impaired and using the guides, they're not guided into the intersection, they're guided directly into the crosswalks. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bertucci. And next is Bill Manganaro. And Bill, you're just reminded, 3-minute time limit, you know.
Bill Manganaro. I live about 3 blocks south on Bristol Lane, and I also was at the protest on Saturday. And I first wanted to, since Chief Pecora is not here, Mr. Reckloss, I'll thank you or ask you to pass along my thanks to the department. I had the chance to speak with police in every intersection where they were stationed during the course of that afternoon, excuse me. They were overwhelmingly helpful. They received a lot of appreciation from the people who were there. And I also had a chance to speak with one of them after, who told me that like all of us, there were more people than expected. And they started with 4 officers. And I think that the department responded as capably and as quickly as it did is commendable. And we talk about First Amendment. Peaceful does not necessarily mean without disruption. While it was not intended, it occurred. And I do have a great deal of faith in our emergency services, in our dispatch, that a delay that was no longer than we have seen when there have been pedestrian, train auto accidents, that they are capable of rerouting emergency vehicles around Arlington Heights and Northwest Highway to get them to Northwest Community or whatever is their destination as quickly as is feasible and possible and with minimal delay. I saw everything from babies to in strollers to senior citizens in that crowd. It was overwhelming because people were in fear. $6 trillion.
All right, Mr. Manganaro, we're not going to get political here.
Well, people were in fear.
Mr. Manganaro, we're not going to get political.
I'm done with that.
Thank you.
I was here till 4 p.m. People stayed in our town. They stayed at our restaurants. And thank you very much.
All right. And just for the record, I was not at the protest until after, just to make sure in my capacity as mayor that the crowd was peacefully dispersing and that our police officers were doing their job, and I can attest to the fact that they were. So with that, I will close the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any members of the
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I was
Please.
told I did not have to hand in a blue card for this one. My name is Patrick O'Donnell, the Scoutmaster of Scouting America Troop 32. I'm joined by the troop's senior patrol leader, Thomas O'Donnell. This evening, our troop had the honor of presenting the colors prior to the start of the village board meeting. We are also here to express our heartfelt gratitude to Mayor Hayes for his steadfast support and dedication to scouting. On behalf of Troop 32, both boys and girls, it is my privilege to present Mayor Hayes with his Crystal Eagle and a certificate of appreciation, which states the following. In grateful recognition of his unwavering support and commitment to the success of Scouting America Troop 32, chartered by First Presbyterian Church, throughout his distinguished tenure as mayor of the village of Arlington Heights, his presence at countless Eagle Court of Honor, we believe the number is 41, by the way. His presence served as a profound source of inspiration, fostering excellence within our community. His dedication to the presenting of the Citizens Pin to our scouts, who attained the esteemed rank of Eagle Scout, has left an enduring legacy, enriching both the lives of those scouts and the community at large. Then it goes on to say, the following scouts of Troop 32 proudly attained the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout during his tenure as mayor, spanning the years from 2013 to 2025. There are 49 scouts who achieved the rank listed on this plaque, and we would like to give this to you, sir.
Please.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, oops, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Before you guys sit down. I say it all the time at the Eagle Scout Courts of Honor that I go to. It was really the best part of my job when I got to attend an Eagle Scout Court of Honor, because not only the kids are so great, but the families that they come from, the leaders, the mentors, the peers, all of this, everyone involved in the scouting program. It may be 40-some in Troop 32, but I counted over the course of my 12 years as mayor, I did my 112th Eagle Scout Court of Honor yesterday afternoon. We've got 4 more. So I think I'm going to get up to about 116 Eagle Scout Courts of Honor where I have pinned a citizenship pin on either a boy or a girl. It was 3 girls that I've now pinned the Eagle Scout rank on, or the citizenship pin on. So it's a blessing for me to be able to attend those 112 and almost 116 different courts of honor, but it's really a testament and a reflection of the hard work that these leaders are doing in our community, and especially the great work that the families are doing to bring up the next great generation of Americans and the next great leaders of our community. So I can't thank everyone involved, especially here from Troop 32, but all those involved in the scouting program in the village of Arlington Heights for all the great work that everyone is doing. So thank you for this very special honor. It means so much to me, and continue the great work with our young kids. All right, thank you all. All right, we're now on to the consent agenda. So I would ask if there are any members of the board who wish to remove an item on the consent agenda. Are there any members of the audience who wish to request that an item on the consent agenda be removed? Seeing none, any members of the board wish to vote no or pass on any items on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, and who was it? Trustee Baldino. Okay, I'll give it to trustee Baldino. Any comments or questions on any item on the consent agenda from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Shirley?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Dunnington?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. And just again, a reminder that the liquor license arena, we're all done, you're approved. And same thing with Mr. Mott. Thank you. Good luck to you guys. Right, we'll move on in the agenda then to new business. And we do have several items to consider this evening. First is an appointment, two appointments to our Arts Commission, and I first call on trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I move now, as I did earlier, to concur in the mayor's appointment of Carla McAleer to the Arts Commission with a term ending April 30th, 2028.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, second by trustee Bertucci. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carla, if you come up to the podium, if you would. And we're going to make it official. So if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me, I, and state your full name,
I, Carla McAleer,
having been appointed to the Arts Commission
having been appointed to the Arts Commission
in the village of Arlington Heights,
in the village of Arlington Heights,
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office according to the best of my ability.
of the office according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Carla. We know you will. If you would come forward. I'm going to have you take your oath and sign it in front of the village clerk, but I'm also going to present you with the village logo pin to wear proudly as a representative of this board and this community. So good luck to you.
Sure.
And the next motion was by trustee Dunnington.
Thank you. I move now, as I did earlier, to concur in the mayor's appointment of Kate Schwartz to the Arts Commission, term ending April 30th, 2028.
Second.
Motion by trustee Dunnington, seconded by trustee Baldino. Any questions or comments from the board or the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Kate, if you come forward. And if you raise your right hand and repeat after me, I, and state your full name,
I, Kate Schwartz,
having been appointed to the Arts Commission
having been appointed to the Arts Commission
in the village of Arlington Heights,
in the village of Arlington Heights,
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office according to the best of my ability.
of the office according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Kate. Come forward with me. And a village logo pin for you to wear proudly as well, and your oath. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Right, we move on then into new business, and we do have the petitions by the Arlington Heights Park District for a sign variation for the property located at 750 West Northwest Highway. And petitioners present, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. John Kramer with Arlington Heights Park District. We're proposing the addition of a electronic sign at Northwest Highway in Euclid in front of the Arlington Ridge Center. The basis of design for the electronic sign was the village's sign itself. So we hope based on that, I can answer any questions.
Okay, Ms. Rodman, are you going to be presenting on this?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
All right. So as the Park District's indicated, they are before the board this evening for a few variations for a new proposed sign. The 6 variations are listed above. They essentially address location, the distance of the sign from an existing sign, the height of the sign, the size of the electronic message component of the sign, as well as the overall sign size, and then the distance of the sign to the adjacent residential. This is a picture of the site location. It is located at the intersection of Northwest Highway and Euclid Avenue. The red circle is the circle of the existing office building, which will be removed. Here you can see what the original sign proposal was that the Park District initially presented to the Design Commission, which was a 2-sided sign. Upon Design Commission review and assessment of the visibility of the sign from the roadways, it was recommended that the Park District consider a V-shaped sign, and they have come back with that proposal. This is kind of an interesting exhibit. This shows you the visibility of the sign from the adjacent roadways. So the green highlights are the traffic patterns by which you would ideally want the sign to be visible, and the red sort of triangles, more or less, are actually the visibility of the sign. So this is the double-sided sign, which you can see does not have the extent of visibility that would be ideal for the intersection. It doesn't cover most of it, but with the new proposal, you can see that they cover the majority of those pathways. So it does provide increased visibility for them. And then this exhibit shows you how far the proposed sign is from the adjacent residential use, because they are requesting some zoning relief from that requirement. But I do just want to bounce back and show you that while they are closer than the 300 feet that's required, if you look at the viewscape of the sign, you cannot see the sign from that residential property. So it will be closer to them than the code allows, but it will not be visible to that property. This is the existing message board that they indicated they were trying to model it after the village's sign, and they've done an excellent job of matching the village's sign style. So here you can see it looks almost exactly the same with the exception of their logo at the top of the sign. And then this is, I realize, a bit challenging to read, but this is their landscaping plan, so you'll see that the sign will be heavily landscaped, just as the village sign is. And then again, this is just another summary of the requested zoning relief that they're seeking, the 6 variations. The Design Commission did recommend approval of the sign. They requested that they consider the V-shaped sign, which they have done, so they have addressed the conditions that the Design Commission recommended. And thus, the motion before the board this evening is to approve, is to direct staff and the village attorney to prepare an ordinance to approve the requested zoning relief, subject to the 3 conditions you see listed above.
Okay, thanks, Emily. I'll just say I'm very happy that it was decided to keep the arch. I think it really looks nice that way. Other questions or comments from the board? Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you so much. Just one question. I think the sign looks great, and I like that it matches the Arlington Heights Village sign. I wanted to just ask about the hours. I think I read somewhere that it is only illuminated during hours of ARC. Is that correct, or is it going to be on at all times?
It would be on pursuant to what the village allows for electronic signs, so it would exceed the hours of the Arlington Ridge Center.
Okay. So will it be like overnight? It'll be on?
I don't know offhand.
We can get back to you on that, but there are hours that were defined when we came up with the electronic sign code. They're not seeking a variation to those hours.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the board? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Trustee LaBedz?
Thank you. I will move to direct staff and the village attorney to prepare final documents approving the requested relief for consideration at a future board meeting for DC number 24-069, approval to allow the following sign variations from Chapter 30 of the Municipal Code. One, a variation from Chapter 30, Section 30-701, electronic message signs, to allow an electronic message sign facing Northwest Highway where electronic message signs may only be permitted at designated major arterial commercial corridors. Two, a variation from Chapter 30, Section 30-302.a, to allow a ground sign with a 665-foot separation between ground signs where 800 feet minimum is required. Number three, a variation from Chapter 30, Section 30-203.b, to allow a 10-foot, 5.25-inch tall sign, ground sign, where 6 feet is the maximum allowed height. Number four, a variation from Chapter 30, Section 30-203.b, to allow a 36.2 square foot ground sign, where 25 square feet is the maximum allowed size. And number five, a variation from Chapter 30, Section 30-705.c, to allow a 32.2 square foot electronic message sign that is 89% of the total ground sign size, where 33% of the allowable ground sign size, which is 8.25 square feet, is the maximum allowed. A variation from Chapter 30, Section 30-705.f, to allow an electronic message sign to be 232 feet from a residential use where 300 feet is the minimum required separation. And the motion is based on the revised V-shaped sign plans dated February 3rd, 2025, and the corresponding revised site and landscape plans dated February 26, 2025, and subject to include the three conditions as recommended by staff.
Second.
I can read.
All right. Motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Schwingbeck. Any other questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, voice vote okay?
Yes.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, that's step one. And so who is presenting on the second? Is that us or them?
Did you guys want to present first and then I can
Absolutely.
follow?
Okay.
We can go through the slideshow, electronic sign, side view. This gives a little better look at what the landscape plan ultimately looks like. And with that building removed, you can see kind of the floristic inventory that goes behind it and kind of the depth of it. But again, very much emulating the existing village sign. That was the basis for design, as I indicated before. If we could go to the next slide. More of an aerial view coming on it. One of the intents was to provide an island of landscaping as you approach the sign from any direction, that it is a pop of color. And again, our park planner did a fantastic job of looking at that. So I think that illustrates it very, very well. The next slide. There is the, again, top view that illustrates all the various dimensions that we had gone through earlier. Again, the logo, the only difference being the AHPD logo as opposed to the Village Arlington Heights logo in the coin above the arch. And then again, the existing demographics showing what views, and I think that was one of the most poignant items that came out of the review process, was alerting us to the fact that we were not capturing all of that Euclid traffic. So again, my appreciation to staff and the process in order to have that, because nothing like putting a sign up and not catching or capturing your audience, both from a branding perspective as well as adding programmatic elements that were planned to present on the sign and foreshadow. So next.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. Ms. Rodman?
Before I jump in, Manager Recklaus was able to find the provision related to the illumination of the sign. It is only permitted to be illuminated during the hours of which the business it's representing. So those hours would need to reflect the hours of the ARC. Okay, So for this second request, which is obviously related to the sign request, this is for the associated PUD approvals to allow the sign to be placed on this property. So the address is 750 Northwest Highway, which is, as we've discussed, adjacent to the ARC facility at 660 North Ridge Avenue. The property that the Park District has purchased on which to place the sign is just about a third of an acre. It is currently zoned B2, General Business District, and they are seeking a rezoning to the Public Lands District so that it will be consistent with the adjacent ARC property. The comprehensive plan designates the property for offices only, and so that designation would need to change as well. So the first item of requested zoning relief is related to amending the comp plan to designate the property for the parks designation to be consistent with the remainder of the property. The second zoning request is related to the rezoning of the property from the B2 commercial to the Public Lands District. And then there are three additional zoning relief requests. Those are the amendment to the existing planned unit development so that the planned unit development may have multiple parcels. The remainder of the property is currently one parcel, so this would add a second parcel to that overall PUD. Then it is a request for a special use permit to allow a facility owned by the Park District on this particular property. And then lastly, it is a variation from the requirement to provide a traffic and parking study. A traffic and parking study is always required with a PUD or PUD amendment. Doesn't make sense in this case, so staff is supportive of that variation request. This is a graphic you've seen before in terms of where the sign's going to be located on the property. This is that landscape plan again. The Plan Commission did consider this request following the Design Commission's review. They did recommend approval of the request. There were a few conditions that they placed upon the recommendation, which would be addressed at the time of building permit. That includes providing a photometric plan, providing a revised site plan as it relates to some curb and sidewalk, and then addressing some existing curb cuts on the property as well. So again, this would all be addressed at the time of permit. And so the motion that is before the board this evening is related to the variation request as well as the amendment to the comp plan, the rezoning, the PUD amendment, and the special use permit.
All right, thanks, Ms. Rodman. Questions or comments from the board? Trustee Bertucci.
Mayor, one comment, and then I'd be happy to make a motion. First comment is for just a little levity, just a little lightness for those who are attorneys in the room. I was reading the minutes of the Plan Commission, and for those who've been around in Arlington Heights for a long time, Commissioner George Drost is an attorney, and one of his good friends and another longtime attorney in town was Ernie Bloomquist, who used to own that building. And George, when it came up for vote, Commissioner Drost said, anytime you can turn a law office into green space, you've got my vote. And I just thought that was very ironic coming from George. So that's,
I noticed that. That was good.
So I thought it was a little levity to break the tension.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll be happy to make a motion.
Any other comments from the board? All right, Trustee LaBedz.
I do have one comment on both related to this and the previous one is I really, really, really like that slide that shows the coverage of what you'll see because I couldn't really tell just on the little black and white schematic of how well you would be able to see both sides of the sign. So that slide, that graphic really, really helped a lot to help me understand that it's going to get a lot of coverage. So I appreciate that.
All right, if nothing else, it is my wife's birthday today, and so in the hope that I can get home to celebrate a little bit earlier with her, Mr. Passman, is there a way that Trustee Bertucci can make this motion without reading the whole thing?
Well, now, Mayor, yes, there is. If the village board is so inclined, it would be appropriate to simply direct staff and attorney to prepare final approval documents of all the relief requested with the conditions as recommended, all as set forth in tonight's agenda materials.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Bertucci.
I make a motion to direct staff and the village attorney to prepare the final documents as stated by the village attorney, as on this document up there. That is my motion.
That's sufficient. I know, Trustee Bertucci, I know you mean the screen in front of you and the village agenda materials.
Correct.
I thought so. Thank you.
Good enough. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Trustee Bertucci, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. Other questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good luck to you, our award-winning Park District. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mayor.
We have one other new business item, and that is a request for a plan unit development and comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, and preliminary plat with variations for the property located at 3310 North Arlington Heights Road, to be named East Country Lane Townhomes. So is the petitioner present? Why don't you come forward?
Good evening. My name is Lawrence Friedman. I'm the attorney for petitioner. David, introduce yourself.
David Schwartz of SFP Properties, the petitioner.
Go ahead.
Just briefly, this is a proposal for a 24-unit townhome development accompanied by a rezoning to R6 in keeping with similar rezonings of surrounding properties over the years, including one across the street, and obviously a change in the comprehensive plan. And there are two very minor, at least I'm interpreting it, very minor variations. We're here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay. Ms. Radman?
Yes, all right. I will try to go quickly. Okay, so East Country Lane Townhomes. As they mentioned, the request this evening is for a rezoning, a comprehensive plan amendment, a PUD, and some variations. This is the aerial slide showing you the location of the property. The property is a little over 80,000 acres in size. It is currently zoned M1, Research Development and Light Manufacturing District, but the adjacent properties to the north and south are zoned differently. It is, in accordance with the comp plan, also zoned for, designated for R&D, manufacturing, and warehousing. The requested zoning relief, of course, at first is the amendment to the comp plan to adjust the comprehensive plan designation to be multifamily in accordance with the adjacent uses and the proposed use. The second zoning relief requested is that rezoning, again, to rezone from the M1 to the multifamily to be consistent with the other uses along the corridor. There are 4 other items that are being requested as well. That is the planned unit development governing the 24-unit proposed townhome development, as well as the preliminary plat of subdivision to consolidate the property into a single lot. They are requesting 2 variations. One is with regard to the lot size. It has to do with the density of the project. And then the last variation is related to parking lot landscaping. There are 2 landscape islands that they are seeking zoning relief from so that they can accommodate fire hydrants, and I will show you those in a moment. So this is the proposed site plan. You can see the buildings are oriented inward in terms of the garage and the traffic flow. So there are 24 units. Each unit will have 3 bedrooms and a 2-car garage. The site does have sufficient parking per our code. Our code requires 48 parking stalls. They will be providing those parking stalls within the garages. In addition to that, they do have 10 visitor parking stalls on the site as well. They have indicated that because of the driveway lengths, they're able to also park additional cars in the driveways as well. So in the materials that you receive from them, I believe they calculate the parking as 106 parking stalls. That is not how we would calculate it under the village code, but they could potentially park that many cars on site. These are those 2 parking lot islands I was referencing where they're requesting the zoning relief in order to accommodate fire hydrants, which the village has requested. The 2 trees that would be required in those islands are going to be located elsewhere on the site. So they will be providing the total number of trees, just in a slightly different location. These are the proposed floor plans. As you can see, the entry level there, that's the garage, and then the main floor. And I know I'm going quickly, so we can come back to these. This is then the upper floor plan as well for those units. These are the exterior, proposed exterior elevations that were considered by the Design Commission. The Design Commission did recommend approval of the proposed development. They did have a number of items that they asked that the developer consider related to the overall design of the development. These are things that would be submitted at a later point in time, typically something that staff reviews at the time of permit. But I think the developer has indicated that they're amenable to considering these recommendations on behalf of the Design Commission. The Housing Commission also reviewed this proposal as it relates to compliance with the village's inclusionary housing ordinance. They have found that the proposed development does comply with that ordinance. They are required to provide, under the code, 1.2 units of affordable housing. So they will be designating 1 unit as affordable housing, and then for that 0.2 unit, they will be paying a fee in lieu of that. So they will be fully in compliance. And that brings us to the Plan Commission's recommendation. So the Plan Commission did recommend approval of this project. They did lay forth 13 conditions for the project. These are the first 7 that you see here, and then the remaining 6 are listed here. The petitioner has already resolved some of these recommendations, so those are what you see in the red strike through. They have been working to address staff's requests and those recommendations of the commission since that meeting. So where that leaves us this evening is the motion before the village board to consider the request for the amendment to the comp plan, the rezoning, the the approval of the planned unit development, as well as the preliminary subdivision approval. And then it would be subject to 10 conditions, since they have already satisfied 3 of those conditions that the Plan Commission brought forth. And then I will just note that this is preliminary approval, so the petitioner will need to come back to the Plan Commission and village board for final plat approval at a future date.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. This is, I'm looking forward to this project because I run by this property every day, every morning. And as I did with the other properties that were built in this area, I really enjoyed seeing the progress as the property was built up. And so very much looking forward to this property being built as well. I just have one question regarding the cross-access easement with timber courts.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not particularly relevant to this particular approval this evening, but I know Timber Courts is saying that they don't think they need to do it legally. So do we have a plan to enforce that down the road?
Why don't I start and then you can jump in, Hart. Let me just clarify as it relates to the cross-access easement. So in the 2005 approval of the Timber Court subdivision, there was a note, and you can kind of see it at the bottom of the screen here, related to the requirement to provide a cross-access easement. This subdivision, this townhome development, has been designed to take advantage of that cross-access. It is something that the board at the time obviously felt was important with the future development of this property. Staff also believes that this is an important access to maintain. It helps us reduce curb cuts on Old Arlington Heights Road, so it provides a secondary access for this development. It's also critical for fire, police, and ambulance service. So this is something that we have continued to push the petitioner on. The petitioner is amenable to making that connection. So it is something that we intend to continue to work with them on. And I will let our attorney jump in on the legal side.
Well stated, Mayor, and just I know that staff in our office have discussed this with both the petitioner and the attorney for the Timber Court property. So this is only preliminary plat approval, but the goal is to find a way to secure that, assuming the board still agrees, to find a way to secure that cross-access easement in a manner that is, meets all the goals as Director Rodman stated, and also is in accordance with the obligations from 2005 as well as the proposed development before you tonight.
So that does have to be resolved before this is finally approved.
I think that's
in one way
right.
or another.
That's a fair way to say it, yeah.
Mayor, could I
Okay,
comment on
please.
that? We have, as requested by staff, provided for the potential of that access. I understand there's some objection from Timber Court, and that has to be resolved between the village and Timber Court. But in as much as we've already provided for the access, you'll either connect it or you won't, I suggest it shouldn't slow us down, and we should be able to go for final approval. We've done all we can do.
Okay, well,
Now, it's not before you tonight for final, but I'd like to just state that. It would be unfair to delay us since we're in compliance.
right. I think we have, do you ever want to comment on that? Are you here for that?
My name is Thomas J. Condon Jr.
Yeah, why don't you,
I'm here to the extent that there was any questions. I did have an opportunity to talk with Mr. Passman this afternoon. We did, sorry.
yeah, you need to talk into that microphone.
There was feedback.
Okay.
I had an opportunity to send a letter to the Plan Commission. as I indicated to Mr. Passman, and I'll indicate to you today, that the requested cross-access easement that was provided was a non-starter. Similarly, that this connection here, if you look at, like, you guys can see it behind you, but there's the connection there. The connection is not in an area that the cross-access easement that allegedly was, or that was contained within that ordinance is unenforceable. It's unenforceable in that, and obviously, if we have to litigate it, we will, but what level is it? And so the cross-access easement is moved considerably to the west, and the argument that there's a curb cut, limiting curb cuts, Mayor, as you well know, you run past, there's already a curb cut there. And the curb cut that's there, you're not eliminating, you're actually eliminating one that's already there. And it just doesn't line up. It wasn't contemplated in the 2005 ordinance. And I do believe that it would be necessary to, if that's the plan, that is not the intention of my client to enter into that cross-access easement.
Well, so how do we resolve this?
Well, a couple ways. I mean, first, if the board is comfortable proceeding, if the board is comfortable proceeding tonight, Mayor, one of the recommended conditions on this petitioner is to provide a cross-access easement. So we certainly would have the ability to require that as a condition of proceeding at final plat approval. That'd be very clear in this round for this petitioner. In terms of the actual substance of it, I can state perhaps maybe naively that I'd like to think there's a way to work this through. I do understand that as from the slide that was just up, that the access easement that was contemplated in 2005 is east of where the access easement is currently contemplated. So that'd be the kind of thing that normally we would sit down and try to work out and figure out, is there a way to design this or navigate this to address each party's needs and concerns in a manner that that does satisfy all the demands and all the requirements for development here. I will say I do feel obliged to comment. I do believe, based on what I've seen to date, that the condition of the 2005 approval for Timber Court is enforceable. It's a matter of how we do it now, understanding that it was done as is typically done when you have a situation like this of two undeveloped parcels where they're trying to contemplate what might come to the south without knowing. So we're at that point now, and I do think that if heads can get in a room and figure it out, that we can sort this out in a way that is enforceable and agreeable to all parties.
Okay, so we don't need to resolve it tonight. It's a preliminary approval.
I think from a legal perspective, you don't need to. If the board is comfortable with that, we'll proceed knowing that, that it may hold us up at final, but it does not have to hold you up today.
Okay, Mr. Ecklas?
No, I was just going to say just that staff does not believe this needs to be addressed this evening. We feel that, the preliminary approval is appropriate this evening, and there's a lot that we can do to either reach an agreement or look at options between now and the final.
Okay.
We concur in that understanding that we think one can proceed tonight. We would ask staff, and I think they're inclined to work quickly on this with us. And we'll be cooperative. We're prepared to be. Notwithstanding the fact that conditions in there, we understand there may still need to be an adjustment. And we'd like to do it as quickly as possible because we plan on going to final very soon.
Great.
Okay. Other questions? Trustee Bertucci?
Thank you. It seems like a good project to me, and without litigating it tonight, hopefully all parties can work that out as far as the cross access. Certainly believe that that's would be possible. I'm not exactly sure what the problem would be with Timber Court, but I'll let you guys work that out. The only question I have, and Randy, you can answer, is obviously I don't see any residents here tonight that want to talk about this project. I went through minutes. I didn't see any, resident concern about the project. So surrounding area. So am I missing anything? It certainly appears as if there's not an issue with any surrounding residential area about this project at all.
I'd let Ms.
Sure.
Babbitt?
I believe at the Plan Commission meeting, there was one Buffalo Grove resident that spoke and raised some concerns about potential traffic generation with the development. They did submit the required traffic and parking study, and that study does indicate that the levels of service that are currently experienced at the impacted intersections will not change. So while obviously having 24 units will generate more traffic than we see today, it will not negatively impact the traffic flow in the area.
Okay, great.
I don't even think there was any neighborhood testimony at the Plan Commission.
No, there is very few
Very few.
single-family homes around this area.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you know it better than I do, Mayor. So, yeah, I'm always concerned to make sure that the area surrounding a project is not of any serious concern. So, good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. I want to say I think this is a great project. I also think it seems to be a new type of product for Arlington Heights because these are rental townhomes. And I'm not sure that we have any here that aren't, that separate from somebody who owns one as an individual and rents it to somebody. So my question, I guess, is will you remain as the like
Landlord.
property
would be
manager?
yeah, property manager and landlord. Yeah, that's the intent for the foreseeable future. You never know, down the road, may choose to sell the asset, but if that were the case, it would be to, you know, a reputable institutional owner. You know what I mean? It's effectively just a very upscale apartment building.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's how it's run and managed. We handle all the landscape, all the snowplow, you know, and manage it in a first rate capacity. You never have to worry about any HOA fees or anybody getting hit with any special assessments or anything to maintain the property. As an owner, you've got to maintain it in a first-class manner in order to keep it rented.
Okay.
You know, so, yeah.
I think it looks great, and I appreciate your coming and filling in this spot that is ripe for this type of a development. And I just have a question. I think this is more for staff. I'm just think back to the days back, I think it was the 80s or the 90s, when there were condo conversions from the rental to condominium buildings. I know that happened here in Arlington Heights. Is if you decide to go that route some decades down the future, is there anything that has to be done? Is there any sort of process through the village if somebody were to take a product that is a rental community and wants to change it into a a condominium type, individual owner? I'm just curious about that.
Yes, it tends to depend on the unit makeup, but in this case, they would need to subdivide the property into individual pins so that each unit could be sold to a separate property owner. And at that point, we would likely require some sort of HOA be established to provide for a mechanism for maintenance of the common areas.
Okay, thank you. This is just not something I'm familiar with. That's why I was asking the question. And last thing I have is thank you for complying with the affordable housing inclusionary zoning. So appreciate that very much.
Yeah, we're happy to provide an on-site 3-bedroom unit. You know,
That's
family-oriented is very
huge.
rare to see, and we've been doing it in a lot of our projects, and it's nice to be able to do it.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor. So, Randy, on this cross-access easement that Timber Court is on their property, it appears that this petitioner will take care of the development of the asphalt to that property line. Who will handle the cost and the construction once it goes north of the property line into the Timber Court property to connect to that little ring road that goes to the garage? There's an area, if you want to put that little visual up again, go to the gray one, that one. So that area there that's gray is kind of the new part on the Timber Court property. And for those who might remember when this was initially developed, there was another Timber Court building that was going to be down where these row homes are, and that's why that was developed that way. Who's covering the cost of the Timber Court property?
So the petitioner has indicated that he is willing to construct that connection if he is given the appropriate rights and access to do so. So he is willing to make that full connection and pay for the entire construction cost to do so, but we need to have the legal mechanism in place that would allow him onto the property in order to construct that.
Okay, so it's not a question of having the homeowners association from Timber Court pay for that asphalt modification and the curb cut and whatever else has to be done there. Okay, so that'll be a question when you guys come back next time. What is the angst? What is the issue? Why doesn't Timber Court want to? I can understand if there was a big cost issue here, we'd be talking about it, but this developer is willing to pay for it. Do we have that right?
Yes, yeah, you have it correct. We told staff some time ago we'd be willing to do that. I would just, again, urge staff or the village attorney to contact council, and we're glad to be a participant, and we'd like to move that discussion along.
Right. Thank you for answering. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Trustee Dunnington.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this project to Arlington Heights. I'm in support of the rezoning. I think it makes sense in this location, along with the other townhomes and things. And also thank you for following our inclusionary housing policy. I do really appreciate that. I do have a question for Mr. Rucklos. I know that this property, they're going to be improving the sidewalk and widening it on Old Arlington Heights Road. And so when I was in that area, I noticed that there's a great sidewalk south of it, the townhomes that are there. But then there's this small piece where there isn't a sidewalk at all. And that's a great route for families to take to the park. That would be the safest route for them to take. So I'm wondering, you indicated that that's Buffalo Grove property. Is that something that we could ask Buffalo Grove so that when they're doing their sidewalk plans or bike and pedestrian plans, to ask them to develop that small little piece to complete the sidewalk?
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Perperniak this afternoon, and we are going to do just that. It might even be a great place for a mayor or former mayor to take a different route on his run.
There you go.
But, so no, we do intend to do that, but thank you for that.
Great, thank you very much.
Trustee, anybody else? No. What is the will of the board?
Okay.
All right, Trustee LaBedz.
I'll try to make it short. I move to direct staff and the village attorney to prepare final documents approving the requested relief for consideration of a future board meeting for PC 24-015, a planned unit development to allow 24-unit townhome development of 4 buildings on one zoning lot, a rezoning from the M1 district to the R6 multiple family dwelling district, an amendment to the comprehensive plan, trying to shorten this, classification to the moderate density multi-family classification, and a plat of subdivision approval to consolidate the subject property into one lot with the 2 requested variations and the 10 conditions as recommended by the Staff Development Committee and Plan Commission. Is that okay, Mr. Passman?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Trustee LaBedz, second by Trustee Baldino. Further questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, good luck to you as
Thank
you
you.
keep moving forward, and hopefully we'll see it begin construction soon.
Thank you. Enjoy the cake, Mayor.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, there is no other new business, and so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
By Trustee Baldino, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for joining us this evening.